right. So have you ever, like while you're DMing, wished you could bring some of that like gritty Game of Thrones political drama into your D&D campaigns? Because I know I have. Just last week, actually, I was trying to like weave this whole web of like noble families, and they had these, clashing ambitions, and I wanted to like bring that into my campaign. So picture this, right? You have this grand ball, and there's all these simmering tensions and whispers of conspiracies, and like my whole plan was to have the players be caught in the crossfire and like forced to choose sides,
Yeah.
But what ended up happening was that the bard in the party, he decided that the best way to like broker peace was to challenge the most fearsome lord to a dance-off. Let's just say things escalated pretty quickly. And not exactly in the way that I had intended.
Oh, I totally know that feeling. It's like the beautiful chaos of D&D, right? You spend all this time, like hours, crafting this intricate plot, and then your players just, they gleefully toss it out the window with like a perfectly timed natural 20 on like a performance check. Speaking of Game of Thrones and D&D, though, there's this really cool article on LitRPG Reads, and it's by Ken Chan. It's called Make Your D&D Campaign Feel Like Game of Thrones, Not Season 8. I think you'll find it pretty useful.
Okay, so we're diving into this article, which was published on December 24th, 2024. And just to be clear, right, we're not doing like a Game of Thrones recap or anything like that.
Yeah.
We're here to get like the practical advice on how to translate those epic power struggles and those, complex characters and those morally ambiguous situations that we love about Game of Thrones into our D&D worlds.
Exactly. Yeah, Chen starts off by highlighting those core elements that make Game of Thrones so captivating, like the stuff that we really want to steal for our campaign. So think about those power struggles that make like Machiavelli look like an amateur, right? Or, those familial bonds that are strong enough to like forge kingdoms, but also brittle enough to shatter them in an instant. And then you have that moral ambiguity that leaves players constantly questioning every alliance that they make.
Right. It's like the article really emphasizes that it all starts with world building. It's not just about dropping players into a pre-made world. It's about crafting kingdoms with distinct identities, histories that like breathe life into their present, and motivations that drive their actions and interactions.
Yeah, and he even gives this great table in the article that lays out how to translate like those big Game of Thrones themes into like concrete D&D settings. So for example, instead of having like the War of the Five Kings, you could have like a conflict over a vital resource. Maybe it's a mystical artifact or a crucial trade route with multiple factions all vying for control. And you can immediately see how those power dynamics from Game of Thrones can be adapted to create that tension and intrigue in your own world.
And it doesn't stop there, right?
Yeah.
The article suggests drawing inspiration from iconic Westeros locations, but with a twist. Like imagine a mega dungeon that's inspired by the Red Keep, filled with secret passages, hidden chambers, whispers of like forgotten conspiracies. Or think about like a sprawling forest that echoes the Wolf's Wood, but instead of direwolves, it's home to monstrous spiders. Or a tribe of shape-shifting druids that are guarding an ancient power.
Yeah, it's all about capturing the spirit of those iconic places, but you're tailoring them to fit your own unique vision and campaign setting. It's about sparking your creativity, giving your players a familiar sense of wonder, but with a healthy dose of the unexpected.
Speaking of unexpected, let's talk about the characters that inhabit these worlds. One of the things that makes Game of Thrones so compelling is its cast of morally gray characters, each with their own ambitions and schemes simmering beneath the surface. And the article really digs into how to create equally complex and intriguing NPCs for our D&D games.
It goes beyond just like crafting compelling backstories, though. It's about giving these NPCs their own agency, their own desires and goals that might align with or clash spectacularly with the player's objectives. So think about a seemingly benevolent king who's secretly plotting to usurp a neighboring kingdom, or you could have like a charming rogue with a hidden agenda that ties back to a long-forgotten prophecy.
Oh, they even suggest some intriguing character archetypes that we could adapt, like the reluctant heir who's thrust into a position of power that they never desired, and they're constantly grappling with the weight of responsibility. Or the ruthless schemer who's always pulling strings from the shadows, manipulating events to their advantage. Imagine the role-playing potential when your players encounter these characters, trying to decipher their true motives and navigate the treacherous waters of courtly intrigue.
What's fascinating is the emphasis on making the NPCs feel as real as the players themselves. They're not just quest givers or obstacles to overcome. They're individuals with their own motivations and flaws. They react to the player's actions, they make decisions based on their own desires, and sometimes they even surprise you, the DM, with their unpredictable behavior.
Right, and the article really drives home the point of weaving player characters into this web of political intrigue. Imagine a player character who discovers that they're the long-lost heir to a fallen kingdom, or a character who's torn between loyalty to their noble house and their personal beliefs. These connections make the world feel personal, and it gives the players a stake in the power struggles and a reason to care about the consequences of their actions.
And it's those consequences that bring us to the heart of political intrigue. How do we as DMs build a world where whispers can topple empires and alliances shift like desert sands? We'll delve into that in part 2 in this deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive. We left off talking about how to weave those player characters into the political fabric of your world.
Yeah, that whole idea that, every choice matters, that a whisper in the right ear could topple a king. How do we actually create that feeling in our games? It feels kind of daunting.
Well, the article definitely doesn't shy away from that challenge. Chan suggests building a world where power is dynamic. It's almost like a living, breathing thing. It's not static. It's not held eternally by the same forces. It's constantly shifting, being influenced by actions both grand and subtle. A well-placed rumor can be just as devastating as an army at the gates.
Okay, so I'm picturing this scene, right? The players are at this lavish feast hosted by a duke who they suspect is playing both sides of this brewing war. How can I, as the DM, actually give them opportunities to influence what's happening, to use that setting to their advantage?
Well, the article has some really great tips for that. Think about introducing a rumor system so the players can try to plant or discredit information, influencing how those NPCs perceive each other. You could even have a courtly intrigue skill challenge where players can use their abilities to sway the opinions of these powerful figures, things like persuasion, stealth, maybe even performance.
I love that it's not just about combat encounters. It's about giving players agency in those social and political arenas as well. It creates this delicious tension where a bard's silver tongue could be just as dangerous as a fighter's blade.
Exactly. And Chan also suggests incorporating elements like espionage missions where the players have to infiltrate these rival factions, uncover secrets, or even sabotage their plans.
Oh, or you could have succession crises. The death of a ruler throws the kingdom into chaos, and the players are caught right in the middle of this power vacuum.
Oh, yeah. Imagine the drama of a contested will with hidden clauses and long-lost relatives emerging to stake their claim. You could even introduce forged documents or hidden messages that the players have to decode, adding a layer of mystery and investigation to the whole political machinations thing.
And let's not forget about good old-fashioned assassination attempts. Maybe the players have to protect a target, uncover a conspiracy, or even orchestrate an assassination themselves, all while navigating this treacherous web of alliances and betrayals.
Yeah, it's like playing out a scene straight from Game of Thrones.
Poison-tipped daggers, secret meetings in moonlit gardens, whispers of treachery in darkened hallways.
Precisely. But it's not just about dropping these elements into your campaign. It's about giving those players agency within those systems. Their actions, their decisions should have tangible consequences on the world around them.
Right, so it's not enough to just say hey, there's a conspiracy afoot. We need to give players a reason to care. A personal stake in the outcome. Yeah. Maybe one of their allies is targeted in an assassination attempt. Or maybe they uncover a plot that threatens to destabilize the entire region, putting their own goals at risk.
Exactly. The world should react to their choices. It should create a sense that their actions have weight and meaning. If they choose to expose a conspiracy, it could lead to a war. If they choose to side with a particular faction, it could alienate another, shifting the balance of power in these unexpected ways.
This is where things get really interesting because it becomes this collaborative storytelling experience. The DM sets the stage, introduces the players to the key players in those overarching conflicts, but then it's up to the players to decide how they want to navigate this treacherous landscape.
And that's what makes it so compelling. As a DM, you don't necessarily know how it's all going to play out. You have your plans, your ideas, but the players are the wild cards. They might choose to do something that you never anticipated, forcing you to improvise, adapt, and let the story unfold in these unexpected ways.
That's the beauty of D&D, isn't it? It's this constant dance between the DM's vision and the player's agency. It's about creating a world that feels alive, responsive, and full of possibilities, and then just letting those players loose to see what they do with it.
Yeah, but it's not just about surface-level plot twists and backstabbing, right? What truly elevates Game of Thrones is how those power struggles intersect with these deeper themes, betrayal duty versus desire and that corrupting influence of power.
Yeah, it's not just who sits on the Iron Throne. It's about the choices characters make to get there and what those choices cost them. How do we bring that kind of like thematic depth to our D&D campaigns?
Well, Chance suggests moving beyond those simple plot points and moving those themes into the very fabric of the game. It's about creating scenarios that force players to confront these dilemmas, to make choices that challenge their beliefs and reveal the true nature of their characters.
Okay, so instead of just having a quest to recover a stolen artifact, we need to ask, what are the moral implications of that quest? Who benefits from the artifact being stolen and who suffers? And what choices are the players willing to make to achieve their goals? Are they willing to sacrifice innocent lives, betray their allies, compromise their values?
Exactly. These are the questions that make a campaign more than just a series of encounters. They force players to think about the consequences of their actions, to grapple with the moral complexities of the world, and to make choices that shape not only their characters' destinies, but the fate of the world around them.
And it's not just about making those choices, it's about the consequences that ripple outward from them. Maybe a player chooses to make a deal with the devil to gain power, but that power comes at a cost, corrupting their soul or alienating their allies. Or maybe they choose to betray their family to protect their kingdom, but that betrayal leaves them haunted by guilt and doubt.
It's about creating a sense that every action, every choice has a reaction. It's about weaving those consequences into the narrative, showing players that their decisions matter, that they are shaping the world around them for better or for worse.
This is what makes a campaign truly memorable, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about defeating the big bad evil guy. It's about the journey the choices made along the way and the impact those choices have on the characters and the world they inhabit.
Absolutely. It's about creating a story that feels epic in scope, but intimate in its impact. A story that stays with players long after the final dice have been rolled.
And that sense of epic scope of a world teetering on the brink is something Game of Thrones does incredibly well. But it's also a world where survival often feels precarious, where danger lurks around every corner. How can we bring that sense of grittiness and danger to our D&D campaigns?
That's a great point. Game of Thrones isn't all feasts and political maneuvering. There's a harsh reality to that world. We'll dive into how to bring that same grittiness to your D&D world after a quick word from our sponsors.
Okay. And we're back, ready to really dig into how to make our D&D campaigns feel as dangerous and unpredictable as Westeros.
Yeah, it's not about gratuitous violence or anything. It's more about creating a world where survival is something that you have to constantly think about, where even seemingly simple choices can have these lasting consequences.
So how do we actually translate that into gameplay?
Yeah.
Beyond just throwing tougher monsters at our players.
Well, the article suggests incorporating things like scarce resources, harsh environments, and those choices that make you go, oh no, what have I done? The kind that really makes the world feel real and a place where comfort and safety are things that you have to really work for.
I'm picturing a campaign set during a brutal winter, right? Where food is scarce, every journey is a gamble against the elements. And even finding shelter for the night becomes a challenge. Suddenly those survival mechanics in the player's handbook take on a whole new meaning.
Exactly. And those harsh conditions, they can even influence the political landscape. So imagine a kingdom that's been weakened by famine, right?
Yeah.
It's ripe for the taking by a more prosperous neighbor. And suddenly the players aren't just adventurers anymore, they're potential kingmakers, caught in a struggle for survival on both a personal and a national level.
It's not just about making things difficult just for the sake of difficulty, though, right? It's about raising the stakes and creating a sense of tension that permeates every decision. When players know that their actions can have real lasting consequences, it makes their choices feel more meaningful and the game just becomes so much more engaging.
Think about those classic Game of Thrones moments, right? The Red Wedding, the execution of Ned Stark, the fall of House Baratheon. These events are so shocking and impactful because they really drive home that point that no one is safe, that power is fleeting, and that even the most beloved characters can meet a grisly end.
And those are the kinds of moments that stick with you long after the episode is over. While we don't necessarily have to subject our players to that level of brutality, we can definitely learn from how those events are structured. It's about subverting expectations, challenging players' assumptions, and reminding them that in a world like this, actions have consequences.
Now, to add another layer to this, right? We can't forget about those iconic elements that define Westeros, like the wall, the dragons, the looming threat of winter. How do we incorporate those into our campaigns without just feeling like we're copying and pasting from the source material?
Yeah, because we're not trying to recreate Westeros exactly. We want to capture like the essence of those elements, the themes that they represent, and use them to inspire our own unique creations.
Right. The article suggests a more nuanced approach, one that emphasizes like adaptation and reinterpretation. So instead of having a literal wall of ice, maybe it's a magical barrier that's holding back a tide of demons, or a mountain range that's riddled with ancient traps and guarded by this secretive order of monks.
And what about dragons? Instead of them just being like giant fire-breathing lizards, maybe they're spirits of elemental power bound to specific bloodlines or locations, and they're sought after by those who are seeking ultimate power.
Yeah, it's about taking those familiar elements and kind of twisting them, giving them new meaning within the context of our own worlds. We can even use them to explore like the themes. Maybe dragons represent not just power, but also wisdom, or perhaps like the destructive potential of magic.
And let's not forget about those noble houses, right?
Right.
The Starks, the Lannisters, the Tyrells. Those families are such a core part of the Game of Thrones universe. So how do we create factions that evoke that same sense of history, rivalry, and intrigue?
Well, the article gives some great guidelines for designing those factions. It's about more than just giving them cool names and sigils. It's about fleshing them out with unique histories, motivations, and relationships with each other.
So imagine a noble house that prides itself on martial prowess.
Yeah.
Their banners depict crossed swords and a snarling wolf, and their motto is strength through honor. Then contrast them with a rival house known for their cunning and political maneuvering. Their symbol is a silver serpent coiling around a golden crown, and their motto is wisdom conquers all. And immediately you have this sense of conflict of different values and approaches to power.
And don't forget about those internal dynamics within the factions. Maybe there's a younger sibling who's vying for control, or a secret alliance with a rival house, or even like a hidden scandal that threatens to topple the entire dynasty.
It's like we're layering complexity upon complexity, creating a world that feels as intricate and multifaceted as Westeros itself. And within all of this, we need to remember the importance of combat. How do we make those battles feel as epic and consequential as the ones in Game of Thrones?
Well, it's about moving beyond just rolling dice and resolving attacks. Chan suggests tying combat to the narrative in a meaningful way. So battles should have political ramifications, they should influence the balance of power, and they should result in like lasting changes to the world.
Imagine a siege that determines the fate of a kingdom, with the players caught in the middle forced to choose sides or fight for their own survival. Or a duel between two champions, not just for personal glory, but for the future of their respective houses.
Yeah, the article even suggests like specific encounter types that can really heighten the stakes. Think about ambushes in dark forests, daring raids on enemy strongholds, or like desperate last stands against overwhelming odds.
Suddenly, combat isn't just about killing monsters. It's about fighting for something meaningful, something that has a real impact on the world and the characters who inhabit it.
And speaking of impact, let's not forget about magic. Game of Thrones has a relatively low magic setting, so how do we balance that with the inherent magical nature of D&D?
Yeah, because we don't want to diminish the role of magic in our games. But we also don't want it to feel commonplace or overshadow the other elements that we've been discussing.
Right, Chan suggests making magic rare, mysterious, and often feared. It's not something that's like readily available to everyone. It's something that's earned, discovered, or even stolen.
So imagine like ancient ruins holding artifacts of immense power guarded by forgotten curses and monstrous creatures. Or think about prophetic visions, glimpses into the future that offer cryptic warnings or like tantalizing promises, but at a cost.
And consider the sources of magic in your world. Maybe it's tied to ancient bloodlines, pacts with powerful entities, or rituals that require sacrifice and forbidden knowledge.
Yeah, so we're not just like handing out magic items like candy. We're making them rare, coveted, and potentially dangerous. It's about creating a sense of awe and wonder around magic, making each instance of its use feel impactful and memorable.
And it's about weaving magic into the narrative, using it to drive the plot, create tension, and reveal the true nature of the world and its inhabitants.
This entire conversation has been so insightful. I feel like I have a whole new toolbox for like crafting D&D campaigns that are rich in political intrigue, moral complexity, and those heart-stopping moments that make Game of Thrones so captivating.
Absolutely. And I can't stress enough how valuable Ken Chan's article on LitRPG Reads has been in shaping this discussion. It's a must-read for any DM looking to infuse their campaigns with that Game of Thrones flavor.
And a huge shout out to Paul Bello, the founder of LitRPG Reads, for creating such a fantastic platform for all things LitRPG and for sharing this incredible article with us.
Now we've explored a ton of ideas today, but we want to hear from you. What specific element from Game of Thrones would you be most excited to adapt for your own D&D campaign? Would it be a sprawling city filled with political intrigue, a looming supernatural threat, or maybe a complex web of familial alliances and betrayals?
Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, may your roles be ever in your favor, and may your campaigns be filled with the same epic drama and intrigue that makes Game of Thrones so unforgettable.